two operating systems, both launching major updates in April 2026. One promises a revolutionary shift towards security and memory safety. The other is finally addressing years of user complaints. Find out which one deserves a spot on your machine and why the winner might surprise you. Ubuntu 26.04 LTS drops on April 23, 2026. That's significant because it's the most common release date in Ubuntu's history. This isn't just another version, it's a long-term support release, meaning 5 years of security updates through April 2031, extending to 10 years with Ubuntu Pro's expanded security maintenance. The codename was chosen by Steve Langesek, a former Debian and Ubuntu release manager who passed away in early 2025. Resolute isn't just marketing speak. It reflects Ubuntu's commitment to unwavering stability for millions of systems worldwide. Windows 11, meanwhile, is taking a completely different approach in 2026. Instead of one massive update, Microsoft is rolling out improvements monthly throughout 2026. Features arrive through optional cumulative update preview releases at the end of each month, then become standard in Patch Tuesday updates on the second Tuesday of every month. It's a gradual rollout strategy designed to catch problems before they hit millions of machines. Ubuntu is betting everything on foundational changes: Rust-based core utilities, post-quantum cryptography, memory safety as a baseline requirement. Windows is focused on fixing what's broken: performance, bloat, user annoyances that have plagued the OS since launch. Ubuntu 26.04 ships with GNOME 50, and this is where things get bold. The GNOME on X11 session is completely gone. If you're running the default GNOME desktop, you're running Wayland exclusively. X-Wayland still exists for legacy X11 applications, but the writing is on the wall. Wayland is the future, and Ubuntu just burned the boats. This isn't just ideological. Ubuntu 26.04 includes mutter patches that dramatically improve NVIDIA graphics performance under Wayland. We're talking about blocked frame time dropping from milliseconds to microseconds. For years, NVIDIA users avoided Wayland because performance was inconsistent. That barrier just collapsed. Now look at Windows 11. Microsoft is finally bringing back the movable taskbar. You can put it on the top, left, or right side of your screen, something that should never have been removed in the first place. This is Microsoft responding to user outrage, not leading with vision. But here's the thing. Sometimes fixing annoying problems matters more than revolutionary architecture. Windows users have been screaming about the locked taskbar since Windows 11 launched. Getting it back feels like a win, even if it's just restoring what Windows 10 already had. Ubuntu's Wayland-only approach is forward-thinking but risky. If you rely on specific X11-dependent software, you're dealing with compatibility layers. Windows taskbar fix is reactive but immediately improves daily life for millions of users. Ubuntu 26.04 now requires 6 GB of RAM, up from 4 GB in previous releases. That's a significant jump, driven by GNOME 50 and the demands of modern Wayland sessions. You also need a 2 GHz dual-core processor and 25 GB of disk space. These aren't outrageous requirements, but they reflect that Linux desktops are getting heavier. However, Ubuntu offers something Windows doesn't: x86 64v3 package variants. If you have a newer CPU from roughly the last decade, you can switch to optimized packages that leverage modern instruction sets. Performance improvements average around 1%, but numeric workloads see much larger gains. The catch? Once you switch to AMD 64v3 packages, you can't move back to older CPUs without recovery steps. Windows 11 is taking a different route. Microsoft is focused on reducing RAM usage and improving performance under load. They're not raising system requirements, they're optimizing what already exists. The company is also addressing one of the most embarrassing aspects of Windows 11, the setup process. Windows Latest recently timed the Windows 11 setup experience at over an hour. That's absurd. Microsoft has confirmed this is changing, though exact timelines remain vague. Meanwhile, Ubuntu's setup has always been relatively quick. especially compared to Windows' bloated out-of-box experience. Ubuntu ships with Linux kernel 7.0, bringing native support for the latest hardware, Intel 14th Gen CPUs, AMD Ryzen 9000 series, NVIDIA RTX 5000 GPUs, and AMD Radeon RX 8000 series. Windows 11 supports the same hardware, but driver situations vary wildly by manufacturer. Ubuntu's kernel is ahead in cutting-edge hardware support. This is where Ubuntu 26.04 absolutely flexes. The distribution is replacing core system utilities with Rust-based equivalents from the utils project. We're talking about fundamental commands like ls, cp, mv, cat, tools that run on every Linux server every second of every day. Why does this matter? Memory safety. Traditional GNU kernels are written in C, which means they're vulnerable to buffer overflows, use after-free bugs, and other memory corruption attacks. Rust eliminates entire categories of these vulnerabilities at compile time. At release, utils passes roughly 88% of GNU core utils compatibility tests, with fallback to original versions if issues arise. Ubuntu is also implementing post-quantum cryptography by default. This isn't theoretical future-proofing. Quantum computers capable of breaking current encryption are closer than most people think. Ubuntu 26.04 is hardening systems against threats that don't fully exist yet. TPM-backed full disk encryption graduates from experimental to production-ready. Your encryption keys are stored in the trusted platform module chip on your motherboard, making physical attacks significantly harder. Windows 11's security story in 2026 is more about usability than revolution. Smart App Control previously required a fresh Windows installation to enable, and once disabled, you couldn't turn it back on. The April 2026 update finally fixes this. You can now toggle Smart App Control on or off whenever you want through Windows security settings. Windows is also improving secure boot certificate transparency. The system now shows green, yellow, or red badges indicating certificate status, especially important because secure boot certificates expire in June 2026. It's not groundbreaking, but it makes critical security information visible instead of buried. Ubuntu's security improvements are architectural and proactive. Windows improvements are incremental and reactive. Ubuntu is rebuilding foundations. Windows is patching holes. Ubuntu 26.04 gets a visual refresh, starting with redesigned folder icons. They're shorter, rounder, with a soft emboss on top. Accent colors now apply to the entire folder instead of a subtle tint, making the feature actually noticeable. The desktop folder icon now shows a folder motif instead of a miniature desktop graphic. Calculator picks up your accent color on the equals button. LibreOffice icons are reshaped to match the Yaru style. These are minor changes, but they signal attention to visual consistency. GNOME 50 also stabilizes variable refresh rate and fractional scaling, both critical for high refresh monitors and 4K displays. Accessibility improvements include a completely revamped Orca screen reader with GS settings-based storage. Ubuntu is also introducing two new default apps: Resources, a system monitor, and Showtime, a media player. App Center becomes the single hub for all software, including full DEB package management. The old software and updates utility is removed from default installs, but remains available via apt. Windows 11's interface changes are less cohesive, but more immediately practical. File Explorer gets voice typing for renaming files, genuinely useful for accessibility. The white flash in dark mode when launching File Explorer is finally fixed. The About section in Settings now displays GPU and storage details, alongside CPU and RAM info. Support for monitors with 1000 Hz refresh rates arrives in the April update. That's extreme, but it future-proofs the OS for esports and high-end gaming setups. Windows is also reducing Copilot clutter. After aggressive AI integration attempts, Microsoft is pulling back. Features like Narrator working with Copilot still exist, but the in-your-face AI marketing is dialing down. This feels like Microsoft admitting they pushed too hard too fast. Windows Update has been a meme for years, and Microsoft knows it. The 2026 improvements finally give users real control. You can pause updates for as long as you want without the system forcing background restarts. Microsoft is also moving toward a single monthly reboot model aligned with Patch Tuesday. This is huge. Windows users have tolerated forced updates and unexpected reboots for over a decade. Getting genuine control over when and how updates happen is a quality of life improvement that can't be overstated. Ubuntu's update model has always been more user-friendly. You get prompted for updates, but the system doesn't force them. Critical security patches arrive through normal update channels, and you choose when to install them. With Ubuntu 26.04 being an LTS release, you're looking at stable, predictable updates for 5 years minimum. The first point release, Ubuntu 26.04.1, arrives on August 6, 2026. That's when direct upgrades from Ubuntu 24.04 LTS become available. If you're on 24.04 and want 26.04, waiting for the .1 release is the smart move. It gives Canonical time to iron out early bugs. This is where Windows still dominates for most users. Professional software, Adobe Creative Suite, Microsoft Office, AutoCAD, Enterprise Tools, runs natively on Windows. Linux alternatives exist, but they're often not equivalent in features or industry acceptance. Ubuntu 26.04 ships with Firefox 148 and LibreOffice 26.2.2. Both are excellent, but if your workflow requires Photoshop or Premiere Pro, you're either using Windows or dealing with Wine compatibility layers and virtual machines. However, Ubuntu's software story is stronger than ever for developers, data scientists, and server administrators. Native Docker, Kubernetes, Python environments, development tools, Linux is the natural habitat for modern development workflows. Windows subsystem for Linux exists, but it's still a compatibility layer. Ubuntu is the real thing. Gaming is the wild card. Proton and Steam Deck have made Linux gaming viable in ways unimaginable 5 years ago. Many Windows games run on Ubuntu through Proton with performance matching or exceeding Windows. Anti-cheat compatibility remains the biggest barrier, but that gap is closing. Windows 11's advantage here is simple. It's the default. Games are built for Windows first. Professional software targets Windows first. If you need specific commercial applications, Windows is often the only realistic choice. There's no universal winner. The better question is, who wins for what? Ubuntu 26.04 wins if you value long-term stability and predictable support cycles. Cutting-edge security with memory-safe foundations. Native development environments without compatibility layers. Freedom from forced updates and telemetry concerns. Performance on older or resource-constrained hardware, especially with lighter Ubuntu flavors. Open source philosophy and community-driven development. Ubuntu 26.04 is betting on the future. Rust-based utilities, post-quantum cryptography, Wayland-only sessions, these are forward-looking decisions that will pay dividends for years. If you're comfortable with Linux, willing to troubleshoot occasionally, and don't need Windows-specific software, Ubuntu 26.04 is the more innovative choice. Windows 11 wins if you value broad commercial software compatibility without workarounds, gaming with full anti-cheat support, and day one releases seamless hardware driver support from manufacturers, familiar interface with minimal learning curve, integration with Microsoft ecosystem, Office 365, OneDrive, Teams, corporate IT support, and enterprise management tools. Windows 11's 2026 improvements show Microsoft is finally listening. Movable taskbar, better update control, reduced setup time, performance optimizations, these fix real problems that frustrated users for years. It's reactive rather than revolutionary, but it matters. Ubuntu 26.04. Resolute Raccoon is the OS for people who want to own their computing experience. It's stable, secure, and built on principles that will matter even more as security threats evolve. The Wayland-only transition is bold but necessary. Rust-based utilities are a genuine innovation that other distributions will follow. Windows 11's 2026 updates are about making peace with user frustrations. Microsoft is fixing what should never have been broken while slowly improving performance and reducing bloat. It's not inspiring, but it's practical. For developers, system administrators, and privacy-conscious users, Ubuntu 26.04 is the clear winner. For gamers, creative professionals, and anyone locked into Windows-specific workflows, Windows 11 remains necessary. The real competition isn't which OS is objectively better, it's which OS fits your specific needs and tolerance for compromise. Ubuntu demands you meet it halfway, but rewards you with control and transparency. Windows smooths over rough edges but extracts payment in privacy, telemetry, and lockdown control. Both operating systems are evolving, but in opposite directions. Ubuntu is building for the next decade. Windows is fixing the current one. If you've never tried Linux, Ubuntu 26.04 LTS is the perfect entry point. Wait for the August 1 release, test it in a virtual machine, and see if your workflow translates. You might be surprised. If you're on Windows and frustrated by years of half-baked features and forced updates, the 2026 improvements are finally addressing your complaints. It's not perfect, but it's progress. The winner depends entirely on what you value more: innovation or compatibility, control or convenience, open source principles or commercial polish. Let me know in the comments which way you're leaning.